about the MVP race. It's been interesting, muddled, but you start to get some clarity at some point as the best teams identify themselves and the best players on those teams continue to demonstrate who and what they are. You see Brock Purdy, now according to ESPN BET, minus 190. If you don't speak gambling, that means he's the favorite. Lamar Jackson, Dak Prescott, who obviously struggled in Buffalo, the next closest. And let's discuss. And Alex, I'm going to start with you. Where do you lean when it comes to those very important letters, MVP?
I mean, for me, I think it's down to Purdy and Lamar. And luckily enough, they're going to face off in a week on Monday Night Football.
Yeah.
But I don't know how. I mean, whether you look at the numbers or you look at the tape, whatever your measuring stick, like Brock Purdy is right there. And there's so I don't get the discussion around him where people, you know, obviously it's the system quarterback, the game manager thing, it's all the weapons. Certainly when you play with another, you know, contender in Christian McCaffrey, but he leads the NFL in about every major statistical category there is, whether it's QBR, rating, touchdowns. I mean, he's second in yards, and I think to put this in perspective for everybody out there, listen, he is on the verge of statistically the greatest quarterback season ever for the San Francisco 49ers.
They've had some
that's
quarterbacks.
Not a stretch.
Yeah.
I mean, they've had 3 MVPs play quarterback there.
Yeah.
And I get it's a great situation, but every MVP plays in a great situation. I think that's a illegitimate argument.
Yeah, I think for me with Brock Purdy, there's no hate from this side. You're right. He is having one of the statistical best years.
Hold on. See, hold on 1 second.
What?
It's not hate to say he's not the MVP.
No, it's not
like,
hate.
The narrative, I get it. But we, like, at this desk, we all have a great respect for what Brock Purdy doing. But I'm just not you, RG, but I'm correcting this conversation because it's always where you hating on him or you disrespecting him for saying he's not the MVP. No, you're not. We view football through a different scope, and people have different ideas of what an MVP is.
You have to be allowed to be critical without being called a hater. I think that's a weak
I think if there's anybody,
I think if there's
listen, I don't disagree with that. What I'm saying is there's just people out there that don't believe that Brock Purdy is a good quarterback.
Right.
Yes.
Because of his surrounding, that is crazy.
That's crazy.
What I'm saying is, for me, the other player on his team is the MVP, and it's Christian McCaffrey. The 49ers are built through physicality. They are built from the line of scrimmage, and this is the guy that makes them go. I always call the 49ers offense the Avengers. Well, Christian McCaffrey is Iron Man. His positional versatility allows them to attack a defense in so many different ways because he lines up at running back, he lines up at slot receiver, he lines up at wide receiver, and he puts defenses in situations where they have to keep an extra backer on the field that he can then take advantage of.
Yeah.
You're talking about a back in Christian McCaffrey who's first in rushing yards, first in all-purpose yards, and first in touchdowns responsible for. To me, that makes him the MVP, and Brock Purdy himself said that Christian McCaffrey is the MVP because he knows that their game, their offense, is built through the running game.
First off, it don't matter how many times we have this conversation. It doesn't matter. The award has turned into the quarterback they want to give it to.
Yep.
I think what needs to be said, though, and how we need to make this distinction is the MVP ain't the best player in football.
Right.
Otherwise, it'd be Patrick
Lamar or Josh every year.
So in being truthful, when you look at what Brock Purdy is doing statistically in this season, no matter who's around him, no matter what he's surrounded with, no matter who the play caller is, Brock Purdy has to be in consideration for it.
100%.
And I will also say this, if there's ever a year to give it to a non-quarterback, to me, this is the year. Maybe Tyreek Hill doesn't have the finishing numbers because he's missed some games. But a guy like Christian McCaffrey, we're seeing these skill players, these non-quarterbacks, contribute so highly to their team's success. And we're also seeing in their absence, there aren't so many quarterbacks that can still play at that elite level. We saw it with Brock Purdy without having Deebo Samuel. You saw it with Tua Tagovailoa a little bit against the Tennessee Titans. These other players matter just as much as some of the quarterbacks.
That's all reasonable. I think that the main point, though, is it feels like it has become who's the best quarterback.
Yes.
And this year, Tyreek's certainly given us reason to consider him. There was a time when A.J. Brown was putting up ridiculous numbers that you say, all right, let's at least acknowledge him. And I think McCaffrey certainly, and Robert, you make a great point.
Okay.
And look, the absence of Deebo, I mean, you know, they were different. Go ahead.
Can I raise my hand and say something, guys?
Go ahead.
You can always raise your hand.
Okay. I got to be quick. Go ahead, Scott.
No, you raise your hand.
No, y'all talk to them.
Speak on it.
Go ahead. So for me, the Brock Purdy conversation doesn't start with Brock Purdy. It starts with the success that we've seen San Francisco have before Brock Purdy showed up.
Ooh.
That's the hard argument
Numbers are
for a
very
lot of people.
similar to a Jimmy Garoppolo year when they were 11-2.
I'm not,
2019?
see, this is when you.
It's not the same.
Alex has the response that you don't want to hear. I don't care about it not being the same. The previous success of this team
They're a good football team.
hinders the conversation around Brock Purdy.
For sure.
No
Yes.
doubt. But we
Yes.
watch football. We know he should be in the MVP conversation. The other part is this for me. I've always said this, and I'm going to stand by this. If it not be for Patrick Mahomes and what he accomplished in this league, there is no more valuable player to their team than Lamar Jackson in the NFL.
Oh, 100%.
Like that there is not. Like, year after year after year, there is not a player to me more valuable outside of what Pat has been able to do in Kansas City.
I agree, but they're a fumble in Cincinnati away from winning a playoff game without him last year. So that's the same thing as San Francisco.
God, they had to get there.
I understand. You're
They had
right.
to get there.
Well, I'm just saying you can't hold previous success against somebody and act like what somebody is doing.
It's
even
run
if it
CMC,
makes
guys.
sense to
Come
me.
on.